All right, it's South China Morning Post here in Times Square, Hong Kong. I'm Nick Atkin. I'm with Chris Edwards-Bailey. We've also got Mr. John Hyon-ko, Mr. JHK over in South Korea. How's it going, John?
Going pretty good, man. How are you?
Yeah, we're good. We just all got done watching a crazy UFC 249 in Jacksonville, Florida. There's so much to talk about. I guess there's only one place to start the main event, interim lightweight title. Justin Gaethje stuns Tony Ferguson. Right, hands up, let's be honest, who had Gaethje winning?
Oh, I did. I felt like Gage was gonna win by TKO. To be honest with you, if you go on my Twitter, go check it. It says it.
I'll take your word for it. I had Tony.
Chris? I had Tony. Yeah, I couldn't see past Tony. But we learn new things every week. This is why we love the fight game.
Yeah, it's true. It was a fifth round stoppage. Herb Dean stepped in. Just Tony was eating so many shots. It got a little bit uncomfortable, didn't it? You think the stoppage was correct, guys? Chris, start with you.
Yeah, I think the stoppage was on point. To tell you the truth, I thought going into that round, I think Tony Ferguson might have given up. I think he showed flaws in his game. I think Gaethje just punished him at every single opportunity. He's a fantastic fighter, so powerful. I've never actually seen Tony eat such powerful shots over and over again. I thought it was a fantastic performance by Gaethje. I never expected him to be that dominant. Just don't understand where it come from, actually. I think he surprised not only me, but I think actually on some level, Gaethje might have even surprised himself on how dominant that fight was. And he seemed to be having fun. And he always looks good when he's having fun.
Well, John, I think you can put it down to Trevor Whitman, can't you, in the game plan and the evolution of Justin Gaethje as a fighter from those last two losses we saw if he had against Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier. Looked like he was a lot smarter, wasn't going too hard, not overzealous. He knew he's got Tony's number if he just stays patient. Is that right?
Yeah. Just the only one word that comes to mind would be evolution. He's evolving, and Ferguson is not evolving, it seems like, as much as Justin Gaethje has in the last couple of fights. Everybody expected Ferguson to come in there, and I felt like Ferguson didn't mix it up enough. You know what I mean? Like I was thinking that he maybe would try to go for takedowns or something like that to see what's out there, but you didn't see any of that. And Gaethje, he did get stunned at the end of the second round, and I think that kind of woke him up to get back to the game plan. Because if he didn't, maybe he would have, went full brawler like he usually does towards the end of the fight, and that would actually went on Ferguson's side, but it didn't happen. And yeah, Trevor Whitman, it's all on him, man. You heard everything he said, and he was so on point with everything in between rounds. It was beautiful to watch the coach-fighter relationship, and and you saw the result. He won the title.
That was one great thing I think they added. Being able to hear the coaches and him saying, put 10% less into your punches. You don't have to try and knock him out. Save your energy for the later rounds. I love the point where he said to Gaethje, you're enjoying your fight and you're getting a little bit arrogant. You don't want to get caught like you did in the last time you lost. And he said, no, I've lost twice that way. And I thought from Gaethje, that was such just a sign that he's learned from his mistakes and he's ready to move on as a fighter. I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
Yep. As someone mentioned, I can't remember if it was either Chris or John, Justin Gaethje got hit with an uppercut end of the second round. Do you feel if that round had gone another 30 seconds, maybe Justin was in trouble and Tony could have finished him?
Yeah, that's the round that I had Tony winning, and I had the other four all to Justin.
It was a pretty dominant performance. I think if it gone the final minute and a half, whatever it was, 3:39 of the fifth round, I think you could see a case for Gaethje winning 4-1, I think. Yeah, John, 100%. How did you have it?
Yeah, 4-1. I actually saw the scorecards the actual judges had, and some of them scored the second round for Tony, but I feel, man, Gaethje was dominating that round up to that point, so it was kind of weird that the judges would score off one punch, you know what I mean? But I guess a knockdown is worth something.
Knockdown, yeah. You got to give Tony something as well. Okay, we're going to get to where both men go from here, but why do you think Tony was so off? Dana White mentioned in his post-event press conference he doesn't think the weight cut Tony did for April 18 helped in the slightest bit. I tend to agree. What do you guys think, John?
I believe it did not help him at all.
Yeah,
Like cutting all
twice
that weight
in
for no
space of
reason.
how many weeks? Yeah,
And if anybody has any experience in cutting weight, it is the worst feeling in the world. And he did it twice in a couple of weeks, and it was not like he was cutting 5 pounds or not even 10 pounds. He's probably cutting like 20 pounds, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, it didn't help him too much, but hey, it didn't affect his chin because he took some shots and he never actually got knocked down, did he? He never dropped to a knee throughout the
no.
fight, right?
It was incredible perseverance, but he looked out on his feet at the end. I think it was a correct decision, Chris.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen him getting more corner advice in his fight from his Muay Thai coach or Rashad Holloway as boxing coach, because Eddie Bravo giving you corner advice when you're a jiu-jitsu specialist for what was the whole time a striking fight, in my opinion, made very little sense to me. When you can see the fight after 3-4 rounds, it's been non-stop striking. I don't understand the point of having your jiu-jitsu coach giving you any tactics where to go in this match. I think you want to speak to your Muay Thai and boxing coach. I don't know what that's down to.
John, were you surprised that Tony just engaged in standing, didn't try and go to the ground, or was it just because Justin didn't let him go to the ground?
I'm surprised he didn't even force it anyway, even pulling guard, getting hold of the clinch and something different, because it was clear from the beginning, from the onset, that his striking was not working out for him. I mean, he would get his shots in, but it wasn't like Gaethje was landing hard. Just like you heard it, right? We heard it. It was just thumps, from bell to bell. And man, it did really surprise me in the first couple of rounds that nothing happened. And Eddie Bravo was saying to him, like, hey, do something, get to the ground. But Ferguson was like, that's the mental toughness of Ferguson. He wants to stand there and beat you in your own game, which didn't work out.
Yeah, generally, Ferguson, you look back to his recent fights, Cerrone, you look back to the Pettis fight, he's one of those fighters, and it's, I'll punch you 5 times, you can punch me 5 times, let's you still standing at the end of the fight. And I felt today we just found out Gaethje's power was the big differential. I mean, if you look at the strikes landed, significant strikes, particularly in the first 3 rounds, there's not too much discrepancy, and that just shows that Gaethje was just hitting harder.
Yeah, it was tough to watch at sometimes.
Yeah. Every time he went for any kind of combination, Gaethje could always just get the hole in. And when he was hitting him, you could just see it was just another level of damage.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to Justin Gaethje in a minute, but Tony Ferguson going forward, this is hugely disappointing. That could be Tony fight now maybe further away than ever happening, right, John?
Yeah, you're talking about the Khabib fight?
Sorry, yeah, Khabib beat Tony. I might have said something different.
Khabib, Tony?
No. Maybe
it will never happen.
Wrong. Yeah, well, I feel like a good matchup for him moving forward when he does come back will be Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker is a good matchup for him, and the stylistically it looks great. I mean, Dan needs a big name opponent, and I feel Tony Ferguson is a bigger name than Poirier, which that fight will probably not happen. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with them. So yeah, for Ferguson, I would like to see Hooker versus Ferguson. I think Dan Hooker said something about him too on Twitter, so maybe he started something up.
So Khabib said no comment. So yeah, that's obviously the 5th time that fight's fallen apart. Chris, do you think we're ever going to see it, or should we just leave it alone? Just before you say, I mean, I don't want to say this fight's cursed because I said that on Twitter and Tony Ferguson actually blocked me. So I want to piss off Tony again.
The only thing I want to say is Tony Ferguson's 36. He's at least a fight away from a fight with Khabib potentially at age 37. I don't know, with Dan Hooker, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, and just all the killers that are in that division up and down. I feel so sorry for him. He's been so close, and if he never gets a shot at the real title or he never gets his hands on the title, I think we can probably all agree we've seen the best ever UFC fighter to not win a title.
But do you think it could still happen? Let's say Justin Gaethje fights Khabib, Khabib wins. Is Khabib, his legacy still not complete, perhaps, if he doesn't fight and beat Tony Ferguson?
I think the Conor fight comes first. Especially the way the sport is. It's all about money right now. Endeavor not doing too well. So always take the money. Take the money fight. Conor Gaethje would be a great match. Conor Khabib would be a great match. I feel like it's not going to happen. I feel it's destined in the stars.
I think in a weird way, maybe it's good for Tony Ferguson he lost because, now he's got to climb back up again slightly. It prolongs that Khabib-Tony fight. Imagine the hype if it does finally happen. Say Khabib beats Gaethje and then Conor McGregor. Who do you fight for that next fight? It's got to be Ferguson, or I can only ever see GSP, right? Khabib doesn't need to beat anyone else other than these guys. John, what do you think? Tony, Khabib, are we ever going to see it?
Probably. If I'm a betting man, most likely not. We're not going to see it. I feel like if he does go back down and fight these other guys like Hooker, so he's going to lose to some of them. You know what I mean? It's just going to happen. He's, like you said, age is catching up, and I don't think he's going to be able to string along enough wins to get to that title again. So I feel like there's like a 75% chance of it not happening at all.
Well, who knows? I think you see Dana White giving out title shots these days to Yoel Romero when he was on a losing streak, and to Jose Aldo before he got taken out of this event because of the coronavirus lockdown. Never say never. Anyway, yes, it is going to be Justin Gaethje against Khabib next, possibly in August when Khabib's done with his Ramadan stuff. That sounds very offensive, sorry. Whatever. Yeah, when Khabib is back from Ramadan, practicing Ramadan, we are probably going to see that match. How do we think it goes? Is this actually a tougher fight for Khabib than Tony Ferguson?
In my opinion, I would actually say Gaethje is a much tougher fight than Conor or Tony.
Yeah.
Just because I think Gaethje, you look at his record in the UFC, never been submitted, never been taken down. What does Khabib do? He takes you down and he'll either ground and pound you or submit you. Everyone knows what Khabib's going to do. I feel like Gaethje has the power and the strength, and he always looks good when his wrestling gets tested. And it's a fighter. He reminds me of Chuck Liddell, because Chuck Liddell is one of those fighters that used his wrestling to keep it standing up, because he's always a better striker. And I feel that's what...
that's an excellent point.
I think that's what Gaethje's going to do himself. I think he will love to stand with Khabib and trade with him because of his power. And I think he can do all the rest and all the groundwork to keep up with him 100%.
Yeah, and John, you can see Gaethje's already promoting this USA v Russia theme, isn't he? The Cold War is back. Is that an important factor, or does anyone really care? Maybe they do the fight in Russia, yeah.
Nobody cares about USA versus Russia anymore. That's not even a thing.
Yeah.
I completely agree with Chris on every point that he's made about Justin Gaethje. He made a very good comparison to Chuck Liddell. But I feel, with that said, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that's the next fight. I feel that Habib's going to fight McGregor next. I've been saying it for all along. When this fight got put together, if Ferguson wins, he's going to fight Khabib next. If Justin Gaethje wins, Conor's going to fight Khabib next. That's the fight to make. And I think that's going to happen. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just see the UFC going in that direction with it. Money fights. We know that. Cejudo.
I don't see them wasting Conor or Khabib on a fight with no fans. I think it could be a while before we see either of them. Because these guys command millions of dollars in gate revenue, and Dana White said as much this week. How it's not easy to give up an $18 million gate, and there's not many fighters that can do that. And you have to imagine Conor v Khabib would probably break even 20 million, given
the thing with Conor Khabib is they have the biggest advantage, which right now, because of coronavirus, it's not very useful. But right now, they could host the fight, Conor Khabib, in the Middle East. They could host it in Russia. They could host it in the UK and Ireland. They could host it in America, and it will break a record attendance in any of those places. And you never know. Some Saudi prince might offer a 60 million purse.
Yeah.
It's happened before.
Well, then I got another idea then.
Okay.
They don't fight at all, and Justin defends his interim title versus the next contender. Because really, Justin, who's he going to bring in? You know, you might as well have him fight with no audience, right? He already did it today.
Yeah.
Why not do it again? And then have them sit on ice until you could put something big together, maybe in December, November, whenever it's plausible, and let Justin fight one more time. They've done it before. It could happen. I don't know.
Yeah, I think personally, I like to see Justin v Conor, but why would Justin entertain that other than for money at the risk of losing the belt and the shot could be? Anyway, these are all questions for further down the line, perhaps. Let's talk about the co-main event. Controversial, to say the least. Second round TKO with 2 seconds left in the second round. Referee Keith Peterson calls it off. Henry Cejudo retains his bantamweight title against Dominic Cruz. Cruz was getting to his feet, it looked like to me. Let's start with that because Cruz also made some interesting comments after, but we'll get to that in a bit. Chris, let's start with you. What did you make of the stoppage?
I agreed with the stoppage at the time.
50-50,
I'm one of those
yeah.
people, I look back on it and think, in hindsight, when there's 2 seconds left in the round, sometimes you have to give Dominic Cruz with his layoff the benefit of the doubt. But then I remember, I'm looking at this as a fan. I'm not a referee. My job is not to protect the fighters. My job is to enjoy the fights. So I was enjoying it. I thought Cejudo looked pretty dominant. Cruz's movement didn't look as good. Apart from that, I mean, I don't really know what to say. I think Dominic Cruz has been a bit of a sore loser, for sure. With the excellently reported comments in the South China Morning Post by the #1 journalist of martial arts, Nicholas Atkins.
Who?
Because he said the referee himself stank of cigarettes and alcohol.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So
and he should have been drug tested.
Yeah. Well, I think
Fairly libelous. If you see Dominic getting a suspension, perhaps, John, that's a really strong accusation, isn't it?
Nah, I don't see that happening. Going back to the fight, though, Cruz, I felt like that was a legit stoppage. It seemed like Cejudo woke him up. I felt like he was knocked out before he was getting back up, so I don't see it being controversial at all. Yeah, Cejudo was just too dominant. Cejudo was killing the legs, and Dom is coming back from major knee surgeries, and his whole body's a wreck. I don't even know why he was in there, anyways. But he was there to take a beating, and he took a beating and got finished for the first time since first knockout loss, right, of his career, which is pretty incredible to say. But being a sore loser, I don't think he's a sore loser because he lost to Cody Garbrandt, right? And after that, he was very respectful in after that title fight and did media and everything and didn't say anything. So, but those are some serious accusations against a referee, though. Like, you really have to investigate that. Someone needs to go arrest Keith Peterson and check him and breathalyze him or something. I don't know. Not arrest him. Sorry, wrong words.
Investigate.
Well,
yeah.
Investigate. You can't prove that. That's such a strong claim. That's something, and we all know Americans love their lawsuits. So.
And what does cigarettes have to do with anything?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Either way, we'll see how that one plays out. But perhaps even more newsworthy than that, Henry Cejudo says he's retiring. Do you guys believe it, Chris?
At the time, I actually thought I did believe it. And then when I've talked to everyone afterwards, most people I've spoken to, they don't believe it. He just wants more money. He wants more promotion. He wants the big fights. I think we'll see him back, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has a little bit of a layoff. And even with his standing now in the sport, he could do a potential GSP and fight once a year and just show up and take a money fight, because there's not really a name for him to fight unless there's some sort of competition, Grand Prix. There's no defined #1 contender in either division, especially the farce in the flyweight division with people missing weight and winning belts. And I mean, he said he might go back to the Olympics and become quadruple C. So we'll see if that happens.
C4. I think.
C4. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it all goes down to why did he pick Cruz for this fight? He seems to want money fights. I mean, is Cruz more of a money fight than someone like Aljamain Sterling or Peter Yan? And if he's not going to give Yan or Sterling a shot, would it be Aldo next? John, what do you make of his choice of opponent? And do you think he's actually putting himself in a better position than just fighting the real contenders in the rankings?
If he's fighting Cruz and Aldo, and if he thinks those are money fights, is he actually getting paid more money to fight those guys? I don't even know. I don't see Cejudo as this like figure that he feels he is. You know what I mean? In this sport, I don't feel like he's a money man. He's not a money fighter. He's not Conor McGregor. He's not a GSP. He's not those fighters. He hasn't even come close to that. Maybe he has the titles and everything, but it's not like he's went on these streaks and beaten these names. You know what I mean? It's pretty crazy to me that he's basically doing a Mighty Mouse in a way. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of like putting himself in a position to where he could get traded or something crazy could happen if he's still under contract with the UFC after this fight. I don't see it. Yeah.
For me, the double champ thing doesn't mean as much to a GSP or Anderson Silva. I think a long stretch being undefeated, being the champ is what really makes you an all-time great. And I think that if he would have had on his resume extra an Aldo, maybe a Peter Yan or an Aljamain Sterling or even a Cody Garbrandt, who is still a massive name, I feel like if you had 3-4 names to his resume, then you're getting towards that all-time great status. But I feel like now he's pretty much got about 5 very, very high caliber wins. And the biggest of them, probably the Demetrius Johnson one, is still touch and go. I mean, every time I watch that fight back, I score it 3-2 for one and then 3-2 for the other. He doesn't have that standout classic fight. I guess the TJ Dillashaw knockout was probably his greatest moment in the ring. But I don't know. It's very hard to judge.
Feels like a ploy to me. I don't think he's actually retired. It's just a power play to get more money out of Dana White. But Dana White doesn't blink.
No.
I don't think. I'm not sure it'll work out too well for Henry, and it's probably just going to be a year or two off, and he'll come back eventually.
Yeah.
Anyway, we better move on down this card to, my goodness, Francis Ngannou against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. 20 seconds knockout, pure violence.
Blink and you'll miss it.
My goodness. That was a scary, scary knockout.
Oh, absolutely scary. Francis Ngannou proves again, in MMA at least, the most powerful hands in the world.
But for me, it looked like Jairzinho actually thought he had a chance. And I believed he was going to do better than it might go 5 rounds, but probably Ngannou would edge a decision. It was a complete destruction, wasn't it, John? Just probably the best Ngannou knockout other than the Overeem. But if you factor in time of the full fight, it was probably his most impressive win, right?
Yes and no. It was the first exchange of the fight, and then they were just throwing hammers, and I felt like if Jairzinho would have landed, he could have knocked out Francis. It was just what happened. It's just how it played out. And if these guys fought 9 more times, they'll do the same thing, and it's just whoever lands first. I see that's the way I see it. But yes, Francis is a very scary guy, and when he caught him, because if you watch it in slow motion, Jairzinho looks like he landed a couple, but it wasn't like power shots. It was just like he was gauging the distance, right? And then Francis just came through with just one big monster, and Jairzinho just ate it and fell asleep against the cage. It was very scary, but what can you do, man? Francis is Francis. You just gotta watch him and just hold tight. It's like a roller coaster. That's all it is.
Yeah,
I feel like Jairzinho would have had a better chance if he would have gone down for a takedown.
Yeah.
Francis being Francis, doing what he does, one of the most powerful people on planet Earth. I mean, if he connects with that chin, connects with that head, if he can make that neck twist, he's always going to put you out. So, the thing is, it's a great win, great knockout, great for the highlight reel. But did we learn anything about Francis Ngannou? Not really. I think we'll learn more when he fights wrestlers or a higher level caliber opponent.
Yeah, very good point. And right, how does it play out now with the title? We've got Stipe Miocic, Daniel Cormier going for this trilogy title fight, and Dana saying Miocic could be stripped of the title if he doesn't fight, even though he's being a first responder in that pesky global pandemic. Do you feel like this one maybe should have been for an interim fight, John? Or where does Francis go from here?
He should fight for the title from here. That's the logical choice. DC should not fight for the title. He should not fight the third fight against Stipe. Stipe should defend his title against Francis. But it feels like Francis is not going to fight Stipe next. That's probably what's going to happen. And I don't see DC fighting Francis. I feel like DC
See his face.
Yeah.
And he's
I don't think
old.
DC wants that smoke.
No.
Yeah,
Why would you in your age,
Yeah.
Exactly. So a lot of people are saying, why don't you just run the Derek Lewis fight back and see what the real Francis can do against Derek Lewis? And
yeah,
I don't see why not. You know what I mean? Derek Lewis is up there in the rankings, and they did have that beautiful fight, the first one. So let's
The
see
fight
what
when
happens.
nothing happened. I think if they were going to fight again, you'd have to put on an ESPN Plus card, because you might as well make it 5 rounds. Because if nothing happens, like, at least give them the maximum time to knock someone out. Yeah. That's the only thing I feel.
Yeah. Okay. Well, moving on, we had Calvin Kattar against Jeremy Stephens. I believe it was the second round. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Kattar dropped Stephens with nasty elbow and then finished him on the ground. Very impressive stuff from Kattar, right, John?
Yeah, that was beautiful. That was a la Chris Weidman versus Mark Munoz. You know, it's just wonderful. Like, it's something new too. We never seen Kattar throw elbows. We're always talking about his boxing and his range, and man, that elbow came out of nowhere. Stephens was doing very well up to that point, though. I thought he was landing hard shots, he was beating up the legs, and working and flowing. But man, it just shows you how good Kattar is, and how much he has developed throughout the years. And I said this before the event, and I was breaking down this fight with somebody else, and I said, Stephens, could he have had too many wars in the UFC? Because that was his 33rd fight in the UFC. Isn't that crazy to say? Some guys don't even have 33 fight careers. He's fought 33 times in the UFC.
Yeah, it's absolutely madness. One thing I think with Kattar, we found out he's actually at a much higher level this evening, because generally all of his fights that I remember, he starts off very, very strong and is dominant from moment one. But this fight, he actually grew into the fight. He was probably lost the first round, in my opinion, but then to come back and win in the second, I mean, as they always say, you always have to face adversity, and you find out you're a true champion when you face adversity. And I think I always had him as a top 10 guy, but I think he could go a lot further than that, Kattar.
Stephens came in 4.5 pounds overweight, and he's lost a few now in a row. Any danger of him being cut, do you think, John?
I don't think so. I don't think there's so many fun matchups for him at featherweight, and he's basically now a gatekeeper in that featherweight division. So a lot of the guys coming up can fight Stephens. You know, he's a tough test for anybody. Even now, you know, I mean, even being knocked out by Kattar, he's a tough test for any guy that's coming up, a scary test. And I feel like a lot of guys will still avoid him, even if they want to crack the top 15. But Stephens, I think that's like 3 in a row or 4 in a row, if I'm correct, that he's lost, which is not good. And he's still ranked, which is crazy to me. How are you still ranked and you've lost that many?
If I was Jeremy Stephens, I'd just go out there and do a big media campaign and go down the Pettis, Cerrone, or Mark Hunt kind of route of I'll fight anyone, anytime, become that gatekeeper and headline the smaller shows. And I think that's probably the best way forward for him. Either that, I mean, let's be honest, this is probably the last time we might see Jerry Stephens on a main card for a pay-per-view event. I think that star power has kind of gone now. Still an exciting fighter. Still will be main card on an ESPN Plus card, but probably just dropping that one level down below.
All right, opening fight on the main card was Greg Hardy against Yorgan De Castro. Unanimous decision win for Greg Hardy. Not really the slugfest we were hoping for, and I'm sure the UFC were hoping for, right, John?
Yeah, I felt that Yorgan De Castro lost this fight more than Greg Hardy won the fight. And I'm very disappointed in how it played out. And I wonder why Yorgan stepped his foot off the gas after the first round and just kind of gave Greg Hardy the second and third rounds. It just confuses me right now. I don't understand what happened. Maybe he got hurt. I don't know, but man, Greg Hardy, he looked the same. It's not like he like showed another level of his skill set in this fight. I don't believe. So I'm very confused on how this played out. I felt like Jorgen had the ability to go in there and take him out real fast in the first round, but he just didn't. He gave it away.
I think we might not have seen another level in Greg Hardy's skill set, but I did think today, for the first time, I thought I saw a little bit of fight IQ. I saw a little bit of technique. I saw him thinking about what he was going to do. Instead of playing checkers, he's playing a little bit of chess, maybe like third grade chess, but it's a level above checkers, if you know what I mean. And I thought actually when he started to hurt him, I think he's just starting to actually become a bit more of a complete MMA fighter. I think he has moved bounds. I think his skill hasn't changed. I think he's just using his power and athleticism. But I think he's starting to understand more of the fight game. And I think the way he was attacking the front leg was fantastic, and how he saw that weakness. I thought his communication with his team in the corner was really good, that they obviously do see him as having some sort of potential. He's not just a CM Punk or even a Brock Lesnar who's just coming in with this big name. Like, they are trying to adapt him. He's taking tips. So I think we'll actually see Greg Hardy maybe have some bigger fights in the future. I don't ever think he'll ever be a top fighter, but I definitely think he always will have the power to be some top 10, maybe top 15 guys, just on the ability of his athleticism, especially at this age.
All right. Well, main card over. We're going to the prelims. The main event of the prelims was Donald Cerrone against Anthony Pettis. 3 rounds. Pettis getting the decision. You feel it was the right decision, John?
I felt like it was a much closer fight than a unanimous decision.
Yeah.
It could have went either way. Split decision either way. It could have happened that way. But what I feel won Pettis the fight would be him landing with his hands more, and it seemed like he landed with the more solid shots. I think at the end of the third round, Pettis got hit with the head kick, and that kind of turned everybody's attention to Cerrone more, but they're not really looking at what happened before all of that, which is Pettis landing more, landing harder throughout the rounds, and the decision went right. I feel like Pettis won the fight, but Cerrone didn't think so, and usually Cerrone's pretty level-headed, but he seemed like he was very disappointed.
Well, what was it, an eye poke? Or
yeah, there was an eye poke. To me, it looked like an eye poke. I felt like it was an eye poke. I mean, when you do lose a unanimous decision 29-28, if it is an eye poke, you can make an argument for a 1-point deduction. That would be a draw. I thought it was a great fight. I mean, if they're not too bad, I mean, Cerrone's took his RV all the way to Florida. He said he wants to fight on Wednesday. I mean, let's make it a 5-round fight, continue the scores over. Let's have 2 more rounds. Let's have some fun. I mean, this is it. They're all in Florida now. The next 4 events are all there. We've got Ngannou, who's took absolutely no damage. We've got DC commentating. Why not have a 1-round fight, eh? Why not have like a little bit of fun? Early prelims, let's start off with a 1-round fight. Who cares? Ngannou can go again. Overeem's there. All the fighters are there. Just like to see a bit more action.
All right, well, whatever happens there, we've got Cerrone on a 4-fight losing skid now. Like I said, with Stevens, are you a little bit worried if you're Cerrone now, John? Or is it time maybe to think about leaving the sport? He did mention I could see the end of the tunnel coming, or he thought he had a couple more years left. But if you're just going to be losing to guys, there seems to be no way forward for Cerrone up the rankings now, right?
Yeah, and Cerrone, he's a gatekeeper. He's fit. He's a legend. Don't get me wrong. He's a legend, but all legends don't have championship titles. They don't have belts. And he's one of those guys that are going to be a legend, or he is a legend without titles. And he could continue fighting, I feel, for the next few years and get good fights, big name fights, and entertain the crowd. And I think that's probably going to be his focus.
Does he need to, though?
Huh?
Does he need to? Because he's got his financial...
he needs to, because he's a big spender, and it all depends on his financials, right? We got to talk to talk to the IRS and
Well,
his
he's got a nice BMF
bookie.
rod. She's got nice gym, hasn't he? Got everything he needs, it seems. And I feel like he's had enough fights to have made enough money. Yes, perhaps he's not.
Yeah, I
spending it.
mean, what's $1 million more, you know, to
Yeah.
the next guy? It goes from guy to guy. But I mean, I'd like to see him retire. I'd like to see him go away in the sunset. But at the same time, people love him. And that's why people love him, because he's Cowboy Cerrone. He's asking Dana, can I fight on a Wednesday? I mean, this is part of him. I think
Yeah.
he'll always be Cowboy.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we're moving down the prelim card as much as we can. Someone remind me, what was even before that?
Was Fabricio Werdum versus Alexei Oleynik.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Again, like Hardy de Castro, not too much to get the blood pumping there, was there, John?
No, it's just Oleynik looked pretty impressive though. You know, he was throwing the heaters at Werdum, and Werdum just sat there and covered up for the most of the time and just kept eating punches, and it did go to the ground a few times. But to be honest with you, I wasn't paying too much attention to this fight when it was happening. I don't even know what I was doing. I think I was working on something else, but I did see that Oleynik he looked physically fitter in this fight compared to what he came in as before, but it's not that impressive though, to be honest with you, because Werdum has been out for what, 2 years, 3
Yeah.
years now, and Werdum looked like he had major cage rust, if that even exists, and didn't perform. I feel like if they would have fought a couple years ago, Werdum probably would have won this fight, but he just didn't have it.
Definitely. I think particularly the second half of the second round and the third round, I thought Werdum was actually starting to get back a little bit of his range. I thought on the ground, actually, he was fantastic. I tweeted out myself. I was like, anyone who wants to know why they should learn jiu-jitsu, they should watch this fight, because you did actually see how Oleynik was outstriking him. His timing was better. He was better with his hands and feet. But then when Werdum did get it onto the ground, it does show you how useful martial art jiu-jitsu is at neutralizing someone who's a better striker than you. And I just think that's the problem with the UFC. You get no tune-up fights. You're always thrown into the deep end. And I think we'll actually see Werdum fight a few more times. I think he was originally planned to fight in Brazil. I can't remember against whom. I think they were doing like a bit of a Brazilian Legends show. I think they had like Minotauro and Shogun on one, where maybe one of them will retire, and I can't remember who they had Werdum fighting. But he's an all-time great of the heavyweight division, and it's all about ring rust, really. I think we have to see his next fight and see what he looks like in that, because his striking was really letting him down.
All right, we'll come back to Werdum a bit later. Got a bone to pick with him. But yeah, moving on down the card, we had another fight that wasn't really too much fireworks. Carlos Esparza getting decision against Michelle Waterson. I think the most noteworthy thing out of this fight was one judge had it 30-27 for Esparza. Another one had it 30-27 for Michelle. It's crazy when you see scores like that, isn't it? It's just, what's the point?
I had it 2-1 to Michelle. I thought it was a very close fight. I thought Michelle controlled the range. She controlled the distance. Obviously, a much better striker. I think Carla was slow to use her wrestling. It was a very average fight. I mean, if you're more of a main card fan, don't go back and rewatch this. There's better stuff to watch. But yeah, it doesn't. I mean, they've both been close to title shots, had title shots. It's just a very middle of the order ranking match, really. I don't think anyone moves on to anything big after this fight. Don't think anyone moves down too much after this fight. And it was 15 minutes of fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything better to add, John.
No, like mentally before this fight, it was Nico Price versus Vicente Luque, and that fight emotionally and mentally drained me so much that I kind of checked out, and I didn't really pay attention too much to the Esparza Waterson fight, and then I kind of started coming back towards the Oleynik Werdum fight. But yeah, this fight I was watching it, but not really, out the side of my eye, and Yeah, there was nothing like special. It was just like they were running around the cage, and at the end of the fight, somebody won a split decision. That's what I viewed it as. I would have to go watch the whole thing again myself just to even judge it. And but yeah, it's just there was nothing like that attracted me, to the corner of my eye when I was watching this fight. It was just they're just running around, man,
Well,
playing
yeah, it was a tough act to
tag.
follow. Like you said, Vicente
Yeah.
Luque getting third round TKO, doctor stoppage against Nico Price. We knew this one was going to be good, didn't we, John?
Mhm.
You have impressed with Luque. I know you spoke to him recently.
Yeah. He when I talked to him, his last fight was against Wonderboy Thompson, and I asked him like, what do you think went wrong, in that fight? And he said that it's just the in cage adjustments. I didn't make those. Thompson was the veteran, and Thompson was able to come in and make the adjustments to win that fight. And Vicente thought like I wasn't able to do that, and that's what I need to work on for my next fight. And it looked like he did that in this fight. It was the same Vicente Luque, violent as always, going forward, but just being more calm and being able to pick the shots better. And 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 he made some adjustment. I feel like he did a very good job in the clinch, right, against Nico Price. And he did he get taken down? I don't really remember, but he got back up though, which was
Yeah.
something that was good because I felt like if Nico Price got him down, then it would have been a whole nother ball game on the ground.
Yeah, well, another fight that was almost entirely on the ground.
Wow.
Bryce Mitchell
What
completely dominating Charles Rosa.
what an absolute
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu masterclass by Bryce Mitchell, who obviously is fantastic with his jiu-jitsu, but Charles Rosa is a black belt under Ricardo Liborio, I think, American Top Team, one of the founders of American Top Team. I think he got his black belts off Carlson or Hickson Gracie himself. And it just showed you that even between black belts, there are levels to this game. It was fantastic. And it was better than most jiu-jitsu matches for the jiu-jitsu. It was absolutely fantastic. And just from triangle to twister, triangle to twister to triangle to twister. And I mean, and speaking for all the men out there, everything that Bryce has been through, we would not want to go through that injury that he went through. I can't think of anything worse. So big up to him to come back from that incident and be doing what he's doing.
You're, of course, alluding to him. Something, what was it involving his?
He had a screwdriver that took parts of his genitalia was removed, which
Very delicately put. Thank you.
yeah, to all the women out there, unless you're a man, it does send a shudder down your spine when someone mentions you getting hit or hurt down there. I can't imagine getting screwdrived and drilled through it. So yeah, congratulations to him. He's one tough mother.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it was something like 13 minutes and 59 seconds he spent in control on the ground out of the 15. Absolutely, utterly dominant, right, John? A great performance.
It was almost like the Justin Gaethje fight, but on the ground.
Yeah.
That's what it seemed like, right? It was just that's what it felt like. And Rosa was very confident coming into this fight. I actually talked to him before the fight. He was so confident. Like his last opponent, he submitted him, right? And his last opponent was Dennis Bermudez, not Dennis Bermudez, the other Bermudez guy, right? And he submitted him, and that guy submitted a bunch of guys. And he's like, hey, Bermudez's jiu-jitsu is better than Bryce Mitchell's, and I submitted him. And then you see this, and I'm just like, holy shit. Like, what? It was like, there was like 10-5 rounds in there. Don't you think? If there was a 10-5 round, that it was there. Like, he didn't do anything on the ground. It was just masterclass. How many submission attempts? We don't even know. And twister attempts is probably a world record for that too. And I feel like this week, Bryce Mitchell actually got to work with Eddie Bravo a little bit. So maybe that helped him in the fight learn a little different angles and positioning and stuff like that for the twister. And maybe that helped him out. Who knows? But yeah, Bryce Mitchell, he's a prospect that's coming up in the featherweight division. I would like to see him fight Kron Gracie and really test his jiu-jitsu out.
Oh, that would be absolutely fantastic. Also for a jiu-jitsu fight, probably a little bit above him, but Ortega would also be fantastic with his ground game. Just would really like to see him fight a good stand-up fighter as well. See what he's actually like on his feet and see how good he is at getting people down to the ground.
Certainly made a statement. And the first fight, light heavyweight bout, Ryan Spann, decision against Sam Alvey. You're going to have to fill me in, guys. I missed this one. We were having a few technical difficulties as getting the TV turned on in South China Morning Post Towers. Run us through it, Chris.
Well, 7:30 in Hong Kong, pretty early time for a fight to start. So
7 a.m. wasn't it?
7 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I just wake up early nowadays when it's fight night, or fight morning, and was having a coffee, put the fight on, and particularly the second round, I was wide awake. I thought it was fantastic. I felt Spann was given this fight to win. Sam Alvey himself, I think, is on a 4-fight losing streak. Probably going to get cut looking at where he is on the card. But I actually thought Sam Alvey won the fight. I thought he won the second and third rounds. That was my opinion. I thought it was a very close fight. It could have gone either way. It's one of those fights you think would have been nice to have as a main event because it could have done with 2 more rounds. And yeah, Sam Alvey, particularly that third round, the way he came back, I think he tried almost everything, and Spann got some lucky big shots in. But yeah, I mean, if Sam Alvey is going to leave, an absolute congratulations on a huge UFC career. Never really made it to the top, but you always have to respect someone who has all those fights over years and years.
Yeah, John, anything to add?
Yeah, Sam Alvey, he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever talk to. You know, I've interviewed him a bunch of times, and always, you know him, he has a smile on his face, and he has a big family. He's adopted a bunch of children, and man, he's just a overall good guy, man. He's a family man, and you can only root for guys like that. You know what I mean? Maybe they're not going to win every time, but you just got to root for them. That first round, though, Spann had him in a standing arm triangle, and Sam Alvey looked like he was going to tap. His eyes and his head was red, and the referee, there was a point where the referee said something to him, and Sam Alvey said, like, he shook his head like, I'm awake, and he got out of it somehow, man. And it just shows you how tough Sam Alvey is. But
did you have
that first round? Yeah.
Did you have the fight for Spann or for Alvey?
Either way, it could have went either way. I don't even know. Like, that first round was definitely Spann because he was dominating that first round. The second and third round, Alvey did a good job of countering and landing hard, but Spann did do really well by picking his shots, getting in and out, you know, staying out of danger. And I felt like because he was moving forward more than Alvey was, because Alvey was looking to counter. And you know how that works out sometimes in the judge's eyes. And then that's why I felt like Spann got the decision, you know, in this fight. But yeah, if Alvey would have won, and I was rooting for Alvey, and you're not supposed to root, but still, you know, he's a family man, and it sucks. He's gonna get cut. It's almost guaranteed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, another big item of news we have to mention, I guess. Georges St-Pierre going into the UFC Hall of Fame. Yeah. No, can't argue with that.
Can't argue with it. If any of you guys saw Michael Bisping's tweet, he was like, couldn't have met a nicer guy. You choked me out and took my belt. I think that pretty much sums it up. Yeah, Georges St-Pierre, he did everything. Nice guy, always a gentleman, didn't talk trash. Really, it was an amazing era to have him and Anderson Silva, particularly because with them being Canadian and Brazilian, they were like the first big international stars of the UFC. They had those concurrent, huge title win streaks. And just good to have a French language speaker at the time, representing Montreal, representing Quebec. And one of, in my opinion, he's on my Mount Rushmore along with Anderson Silva and Fedor. Potentially the last places between DJ and John Jones. We'll find out in a year, but yeah, he's an absolute legend, and he deserves to be in not even just the UFC Hall of Fame, but he should be in the Lazarus Hall of Fame for just all sports, to tell you the truth.
Yeah,
GSP, arguably the greatest of all time. Like, you cannot deny that. You know what I mean? Like, look at his resume. He won titles in 2 different weight classes, never been popped for PEDs. You know, I feel like that has to factor in a little bit at least, you know, and yeah, he's done it the right way. You know what I mean? He's just won fights and continue to win fights and I wasn't really the biggest fan of his while he was fighting, you know, but you cannot deny him. You got to respect him. He's just incredible what he has done and I feel like he was Conor McGregor before Conor McGregor. He was like that first phase, you know. But he didn't have to do the trash talking. He didn't have to do all of that stuff. He just had to win and be who he was and not play a character. And yeah, I love him. I love him for it. But I just say it right now. I wasn't the biggest fan of his fighting style. But what can you do? You win, man. It's like any other sport. It doesn't matter how you win. You just win, and you get that respect. So respect to GSP.
The only 3 letters you could argue that are more iconic in this sport than GSP is MMA and UFC. And then after that, it's GSP. So to be the 3rd biggest 3-letter abbreviation is not too bad.
All right, well, I guess we can't not talk about the big issue that we had yesterday, which was probably inevitable. Someone was going to test positive for coronavirus. Jacare and 2 of his cornermen tested positive. On Friday, I believe, they found out after he'd already weighed in. He weighed in despite disclosing to the UFC that he had a family member with the virus. And then, yeah, there's a video going around of him hanging out with Fabricio Werdum. This is why I said I had a bone to pick with Werdum. Would Werdum have been allowed to even fight Alexei Oleynik when maybe he's got coronavirus? And then, who knows, Jacare fist bumped Dana White. Dana White then fist bumped every other fighter in the weigh-ins. We all know that it's tough to put on an event, and I think the UFC should be commended for doing a really good job. They almost thought of absolutely everything, but then strangely they forgot one very important thing, which was to tell fighters. Say, Chris, how did you get in here today? You had to say, I have not traveled for 14 days.
I had to say I've not traveled for 14 days. I had to sign a full waiver, no sore throat, no illness, no heat. I had to go for a temperature checking mechanism. Defense is in the video. He is wearing gloves and mask, and in every part he was wearing it. And we all know they don't really wear. It's just minimizing the opportunity.
But my point is, that's just to you to get in South China Morning Post. You had to fill a form declaring you didn't travel 14 days. You haven't come into contact with anyone who's traveled overseas. How the hell did UFC not ask each fighter to fill a form like that and say, I have not had contact with anyone with the virus who has showed symptoms, or I have not had contact with anyone who's traveled overseas for the last 14 days? It's like leaving the front door wide open after locking down every window. Oh, it could potentially cause a chain of infections, which we may not find out now until next week. It's potentially something to keep our eye on, right? We'll see how the next round of tests come up. John, South Korea still feeling the coronavirus as well. Hong Kong, things seem to be a bit getting back to normal, but a bit relaxed, wasn't it? Just the whole thing.
It was a weird situation. Even during the broadcast, the commentators were sitting in separate sections, but then they came together and stood next to each other to do the on-camera stuff. And it was like, okay, what was the point of sitting separately then? It's just, it doesn't match up what they're doing, right? And like you said, it could be Fistgate right there. You know what I mean? Like, he fist bumped Jacare, he fist bumped everybody else, and now everybody has corona. And hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully nobody has it, and Jacare is the only one that has it. But I've talked to a bunch of fighters, and one fighter told me he thinks he already had the coronavirus, so he doesn't have nothing to worry about. He has the antibodies, and he's gonna fight in a couple of days in the next 2 events. And he told me this himself in the interview, so it's not like I'm just releasing information that's not supposed to be out there. Another guy that I interviewed, he's not fighting, but he was training with Lyman Good. Lyman Good tested positive for coronavirus, right? They were training together, grappling, doing strength and conditioning. He didn't even test positive. Isn't that crazy? How that happened? Like, he was grappling with Lyman Good, preparing with them for his fight. Lyman Good gets coronavirus. He doesn't test positive. But one of their coaches did, and his girlfriend, I think, tested positive. So it doesn't affect everybody the same. But, yeah, it's very risky what they're doing. But I don't know, man. Like, they're going to take enough precautions.
To say it, it's a success that only one fighter tested positive or one person out of however many they tested. You can't say that, right? It's not a success.
Yeah, you can't say that.
Because,
it's not a success.
Yeah, I don't want to dog the UFC. It was so much fun to have that. I've really missed it. I'm sure we all have, right?
Well, I think my problem is as well, a lot of the emphasis has been put on the fighters, but we have to remember there's medical teams, cutman, just general staff, Dana White. Any of these people could get it, and that's actually a bigger problem, because if it gets passed on to a fighter, they're probably going to leave Jacksonville now and go back to their family or their camp, and maybe they'll test positive there, maybe they'll keep it
hush. They'll self-isolate, probably.
We don't know, but the problem is if we have a Dana White or a doctor or a cameraman who has it, who does the show on Thursday, and that leads to a second outbreak that because you have to remember, people don't show symptoms for a few days. You never know, hopefully, touch wood, it's all fine, but you never know. 10 days from now, there could be 50 potential new cases in America that have spread from this event. I mean, we all know we're dirty human beings. We can never be 100% sterile.
But this is something I wanted to say is, so as you said, Chris, you only start showing symptoms or after a certain amount of days. Jacare didn't. The first test he took on Wednesday didn't come back positive. It was the one on Friday. It's a matter of days. Imagine if he caught it one day later, he would have been in the cage with Uriah Hall and passed it on, most likely to Uriah Hall, given the close nature, and passed it on. Hall would have passed it on to his team. And you see how it just then spreads. And then before you know it, there's an outbreak and everyone in that hotel's got it. And it's not just the UFC who are in the hotel. I know that AEW, the wrestlers, are also there because they're doing shows in Jacksonville because Tony Khan, obviously, and Shad Khan own the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then it spreads even further. And then this is the whole point, is the media who are trying to say, no, they're not trying to get events cancelled. They're just trying to say, does it make sense, as much as we want to see fights happen, to do this? If you cause an outbreak and then someone dies, say a fighter's relative or something, it's directly on the UFC, and that's a terrible, terrible thing.
Yep. And also, I think it's a big thing having 3 events in a row in the same place, because you're not going to know for a period of time. Well, personally for me, and I mean, in Hong Kong and in other places I know where people have gone back to work, they've been having like a cooling off period. So they've been bringing people in maybe 2 or 3 times a week and then go home, relax for a few days, get tested. And I feel like having so many events close together, I know it's because they want to get their TV deal, they need their 43 fights in a year or something, but really you should wait 14 days and hope no one catches coronavirus in the next 14 days. And that's the only way you know what you're doing is enough.
Well, they know the risks. They know the risks. The UFC is not going to do events and not know the risks. They know what they're doing. And I'm just wondering, are the fighters flying out like normal? Are they leaving? Are they being tested before they leave? Are they being tested and wait for the results and then leaving? I'm just wondering, what is the protocol for that? Because if they're just testing them before the fights, that makes no sense. They should be testing them after the fights, because Jacare's test, Wednesday's test came negative, Friday's test came positive. That means a lot of things could have happened between Friday and Saturday night, right?
He was in a steakhouse with the 2 cornermen and the whole team. When they found out, they got the text message saying you've tested positive. And then they suddenly, oh shit, we better put our masks and gloves on. This was according to Brett Okamoto, who's very well connected, obviously. So yeah, even when they found out, they were in public and touching things, I'm sure, breathing. Oh God, imagine if there's
I wonder if in the States, do they like they were at a steakhouse, right? I wonder if they find that information. Does the steakhouse shut down and they sanitize the steakhouse? Is that something that they do in the U.S.? Because in Korea, that's what they do. Once someone has been somewhere, they shut it down and they clean it up.
Days, sterilization, test everyone else, contact tracing. I mean, yeah, that's why most places right now in Hong Kong are probably the same in Korea. Whenever you go anywhere, you have to leave your email and your phone number. That if someone does test positive, they can get back in touch with you. And I mean, I'm not saying the UFC has shot itself in the foot, but they're leaving themselves potentially to really get some bad press. Touch wood, they can get through it. But I mean, I don't know. On your broadcast out in Korea, John, did they have the message from Donald Trump?
Yeah.
I just wanted to see if they put it out for every market, because it was on the broadcast out here in Hong Kong, which I thought was an interesting touch.
Yeah, it is. It is an interesting touch. I was like, right when I saw him come on my screen, I just laughed because he's a comedian, and whenever a comedian comes on, you laugh, right? So so it's almost like he didn't even know what he was talking about. He's just saying something that somebody wrote for him, and it felt really disingenuous. It felt dishonest. But hey, what can you do? He's buddies with Dana White.
Yeah, we don't want to make any enemies. And Trump, if you want to come on the podcast, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, we talk fights. Yeah, no politics.
We got KFC. We got KFC ready for you.
Well, yeah, we hit the hour mark, so I guess we should shut the hell up, and maybe we'll see each other again on Thursday, Hong Kong time, Wednesday night show in Florida, and then UFC is going to be back on next Saturday. So let's get the band back together, guys. If everyone's available to make it, hopefully no more coronavirus cases. Anyway, Chris, give us some plugs. How can we find you?
At C Edwards Bailey on Twitter, at Chrissy BHK on Instagram.
Have you got a picture yet on your Instagram?
Profile
picture.
Yeah, I've just put a picture up.
Okay,
it's me in a glass box full of water, looking like I'm drowning. Nice. So, yeah, come at me if you want to ask me any questions. Yeah, and always remember, I'm always against to argue with any team Luque. Let's go.
Right, well, yeah, you can see John's handle on there, JHK MMA. John, anywhere else we can reach you?
Nah, it's JHK MMA all over the place. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everything. So it makes it easy for everybody. But yeah, man, I appreciate you guys the time and stay safe, man. I'm glad that they're taking the right precautions in Hong Kong, because if the cities and the countries are not taking the right precautions, this thing will never stop. It will just continue going and going and going. And we're lucky. I feel like we're much luckier than people in other parts of the world that the governments don't really give a shit as much. And hopefully if we do a good job, they'll see it and they'll follow the protocol and the procedures, and they'll get their act in order. But hey, UFC, keep doing shows, man. I support it, and please be safe, and you guys be safe.
Over to Donald Trump, I guess.
We all need something to talk about.
Anyway, thanks guys again. Hopefully see you again soon, and thanks everyone else for watching. Hope you all enjoyed as much as we did.
Peace.
All right, what the fuck did I do?
Good